which makes me sad. First, we have City of Spies, which is another 2016 release from Stronghold Games. I've heard it's good. I haven't played it yet. Next, we have Order of the Gilded Compass, which I was really excited to get my hands on at Gen Con, but I didn't have the cash. I finally got my hands on it. It was a Christmas gift from my brother, and I haven't learned how to play this yet. Then we have Seven Wonders. Yes, everybody talks about Seven Wonders. I avoided getting it for a long time because it felt, I don't know, maybe I'm just biased against mainstream games. It's really good, though, I have to admit. It's drafting. It's kind of like a much more complicated version of Sushi Go, if you've played that. But it's civilization building. Yeah, I was quite impressed with it. Then we have Seasons. I really, really like Seasons. Seasons is a card game mixed with a dice drafting game. The cards are magical artifacts that have different comboing powers, sort of like in Magic the Gathering. And you're playing those cards and taking other actions based on which of several big chunky dice you take at various points. And different parts of the year, different seasons, have different abundances of different resources, and you can manipulate the time to some extent to push things forward or back into seasons that benefit your strategy more. It has a very important track that sits in front of you that you move a white wooden cube on that can get displaced, and that's a huge frustration for me. But it's a really cool game with really neat art. Then we have Libertalia. Libertalia is a game I resisted getting for a while because it seems like it couldn't be as interesting as people kept saying it was. The theme of Libertalia is that you are a bunch of different pirate ships that have been cruising the seas together, and you've, over the course of different sailing seasons, you overtake and capture different ships, and then you're sending members of your crew onto those ships to collect loot. Some of which you want, some of which is cursed, because there's always cursed loot, always, and you want to avoid. And what held me up for a long time on this is that while there are a bunch of different cards in the game, you draw a set at random, and then everybody takes that exact same set from their personal decks. So it's not about what cards you have, it's more about when you use the cards that you have. So there's a little bit of double think and bluffing and stuff going on like that. I have to say, though, it's quite good. It's quite good. And we have Carcassonne. Carcassonne is one of my favorite games. It's a lighter tile placement game with really nice art. I really, really like Carcassonne. I like it so much that I bought a whole bunch of expansions, and now it's huge and takes a long time to play. And I also played it a lot on my phone and an ancient iPad. And I haven't really played it much anymore. I kind of burnt out on it, which makes me really sad because it is a really, really good game. Then we have Mysterium. This was the game at Gen Con 2 years ago, plus Blood Rage. It's kind of a seance game. If you've played Dixit, it's very similar in some ways and very different in other ways. One player plays a ghost who's witnessed a murder, or I think is a target of the murder, and they are trying to get the other players to guess various bits of information, but they can only communicate by giving them out cards with very dreamlike, nightmarish art to try and point them to different possible suspects. It's the usual where, who, and with what, clue-style puzzle. Really cool, really neat art. Maybe a little lighter than I like, but everybody enjoys it every time I take it out. So what do I know? Then we have Flashpoint Fire Rescue, which is a firefighter themed cooperative game. In some ways very similar to Pandemic, and in other ways completely different from Pandemic. It's fun. I haven't played it as much as I'd like. Then we have just the base box for Netrunner, which is good. I don't get to play many two-player games as two-player games, because usually when I'm playing with just my wife, we're trying to learn a game to play with the other gaming groups when we have more people. But it's a lot of fun, and I played the original Netrunner with the not good art back when it first came out, so kind of near and dear to my heart. And we have King of New York, a sort of spiritual successor or sequel or whatever you want to call it to King of Tokyo, everybody's favorite Yahtzee game. I'm kind of meh on King of New York. I'm sorry. I know that probably makes me a bad person. It doesn't do it for me. I keep going back and forth on to whether I should get the King of New York power-up expansion to kind of add more variability and more personality to it, or if that's just throwing good money after bad and I should give it to somebody else who will appreciate it more. Maybe I just haven't played the game enough to give it enough of a chance. I must be crazy because everybody loves it. But yeah, it just doesn't do it for me. Over here we have Steampunk Rally, which will play up to 8 players, which is insanity. Is it 8? Yeah, up to 8 players. And I haven't done that, but I believe that it will work. Steampunk Rally is a dice placement game with 108 dice in the box. They're kind of mini dice, but they're not the super, super tiny dice. You're building different contraptions crewed by great inventors from across history, including a lot of female inventors, which makes me very happy, as they just don't get the representation they've deserved throughout history. And you're using them to go on a race. The race itself, the gameplay is maybe a little ho-hum, but most of the game isn't about the race. It's about optimizing your contraption based on cards you're drafting, and then manipulating the engine you're building to get the right dice you need in the right places to move along the track. So it's a racing game, but it's kind of more of a thematically a racing game than actually a racing game. Anyway, quite good. Check it out. We have Wyatt Earp, which is in the same... It's not actually Mystery Rummy, but it's in the same series. And I haven't learned how to play it yet. It's supposed to be good. I really want to play it. It is a Western-themed game, but I think it's actually designed by Americans. So I have 2 Western-themed games by Europeans and 1 by Americans. Then we have Machikoro, a Japanese game. It's kind of a bit like Bingo, but with dice. It's on the lighter side, and as I've already said, I tend to like heavier games. But I like Machikoro. I think maybe I like it more than I should because of the theme and the art. Again, because I lived in Japan for 2 years. It kind of brings up some nice memories, even though it's... yeah. Anyway, it's a lot of fun. I brought people into the hobby with this game. Yeah. Then we have Viceroy. Viceroy is a card placement game. Every time I play it, I start thinking, maybe this isn't as good as I remembered. It feels kind of clunky, and at the end, I'm always really impressed with it. Yeah. You're placing your cards in a pyramid, interconnecting them to use their abilities and manipulate their cost, but also to connect gems that are worth things at the end of the game. Scrabble. My wife really likes Scrabble. I don't need to tell you about Scrabble. Then we have Dark Seas. Dark Seas was a gift, and I'm glad it was a gift because otherwise I would have ignored it, because this game has problems, and they're well-documented problems. The box says that it goes up to 4 players, I think, and then they issued a new errata after it came out that said, you should really only play it with 2 or 3. And the dice were misprinted. Yeah, I feel bad for Dark Seas. But when you play it 2-player, it's actually a really interesting game. It's a rondel building game. You're moving your pirate around your personal island, and you're putting different tiles down to take different actions at different times. I think it's actually a lot of fun. And I'm glad my friend Ken gave it to me so that I would play it, because otherwise I would have ignored it because it had so many problems. But if you get a copy, they have a form online, and they will send you replacement dice, and you can get the correct rules manual online. Alright. Then we have Red November. Red November is an okay game. I have it because it was one of the first games that I bought when I got back into the hobby, and because of the theme. You are gnomes in a doomed Russian-style submarine. You are drinking grog to perk up your courage to run into rapidly flooding compartments to try and shore this thing up until you get saved, because it's currently in a fight with a giant squid or kraken or something. Yeah. It has some issues, but it's still worth playing, and I really like the theme. We have Between Two Cities, which is another Stonemaier Games publication, although not published by, or not designed by Jamie Stegmaier. This is another one that doesn't really work two-player. So I've read the manual a couple times, but I haven't actually played it. Because when I can't play a test game with my wife, it's less likely to get brought to the group. We have Happy Pigs. Happy Pigs is a surprisingly fun economics game with really creepy art. And if you want, they do expansions that don't change the game functionally, but add additional animals you can raise, like penguins and cows and that sort of thing, which are even creepier art. Let's move on to Splendor. Splendor is an okay game. A lot of people love Splendor. I don't get why they love Splendor. It's a good game. It's a good game. I find it kind of bland. Although those poker chips are heavy. That's nice. We like heavy poker chips. Sometimes I wonder if that's the whole reason why this game is popular. Above that, this is Shogi. Shogi is Japanese chess. Imagine, if you will, a chessboard that doesn't have pieces that are sculpted, but rather arrow-shaped tabs of wood with characters painted on them. Imagine, like the Duke abstract strategy game to some extent, when those pieces pass a certain point in the board, they flip and change in their abilities. Now imagine if, when you took an opponent's piece in chess, you kept that piece not just for keeping score, but because you could actually put that piece back down instead of moving one of your existing pieces as a new piece for your side of the board. It's really cool. It kind of melts my brain. Okay. Then we have the Networks, which is kind of UHF, the board game. You are put in charge of a less than successful public access or low-grade TV station, and over the course of the game, you're going to upgrade your shows and personalities and that sort of thing to carry it to victory. Haven't played it. I know, I'm a bad person. Then we have Mythotopia, which is by Martin Wallace, one of my father's favorite designers. This is a sort of sword and sorcery themed war game with some really interesting mechanisms. It was a gift, so I don't know as much about it as I should, and I haven't learned how to play it yet. Then we have Mage Knight. Everybody says Mage Knight is amazing. I have no idea. And this is one of the first games I bought when I got into the hobby, and I've tried to learn it at least twice. It is a bear to learn, and I can only imagine it is a bear to teach. Everybody tells me it is a religious experience. It is such a good game. I have no idea. If you're watching this, I am incredibly impressed with your fortitude as a human being. As I'm getting worn out, and I gotta imagine you are too. But yes, there are still more games, so let's keep